Hello everyone, welcome back to Consensus, and let's see if we can reach it today. Rather recently, the YouTube channel People Make Games released a half-hour long mini documentary on the ending of Mass Effect, and I actually wanted to touch on that today and give my thoughts on it. So I'm going to discuss the ending of Mass Effect 3 that was brought up in the People Make Games video, and then I'm going to go over some of the details and implications that may arise as a result of the conversations that took place in that video and the ending that was, I guess, ultimately scrapped from Mass Effect 3. So without further ado, let's get at it. Alright, I wanted to preface this by stating that the video made by People Make Games is absolutely fantastic, and I think every single one of you should go and check it out for yourselves, either before you watch my video or after. It shouldn't really affect your viewing experience, but definitely go and take a look at it if you haven't already. I'll provide a link down in the description so you guys can all have easy access to it. Throughout the video, many people from different sectors of BioWare's development team at the time of Mass Effect 3's initial release are interviewed, and they all give their thoughts on the final outcome of the game and the subsequent community backlash that they all received. I just wanted to actually note quickly that all the people that were interviewed actually left BioWare at some point after the initial release of Mass Effect 3. But that shouldn't harm the credibility or the validity of any of their statements, seeing as they were all working on the Mass Effect 3 project for BioWare at the time of its release. Now, with regards to the backlash that the BioWare team received, I quickly wanted to touch on the fact that fans were upset with the blandness of the endings, and that's something that most of us are probably well aware of at this time. I'm sure if any of you have picked up Mass Effect Legendary Edition recently, you may not be aware of how the original ending was perceived by fans and the community at large, but it was generally negative. And I played through the entire Mass Effect series years after Mass Effect 3's original release date, so I didn't have any pressing issues with it after I played through it. I enjoyed the trilogy, and I didn't even know that the game that I had played had the extended cut already added onto it as a DLC shortly after the initial release. I was completely oblivious to that. However, once I started watching videos and reading threads online related to Mass Effect, I realized how upset people truly had been at the original ending of the series, and how many of them still were upset with it. So just keep all of that in mind as I summarize the ending that was discussed in the People Make Games video. Because after hearing what this original idea actually was, and understanding the decisions that ultimately led us to the ending that we were given originally, you may get some different perspective on the ending and perhaps even ultimately change your overall outlook towards the BioWare team at the time of Mass Effect 3's release and the end of Mass Effect 3 itself. Alright, well, not all the developers were actually satisfied with the ending that was released with the original Mass Effect 3. That's not including the extended cut. That is the bare bones original initial release. Not a lot of them were satisfied with that, and they actually had issues with the Catalyst being portrayed as a child, so the Star Child, as we all know him by. The team was upset with that ending as well. So it wasn't just the players and fans that were upset with the ending. The animation director from BioWare Montreal, Dave Wilkinson, actually stated that there was an original storyboard ending that was not totally different, but quite a bit different from the ending that was actually released. And he actually said that he was the one that created this early storyboard ending after he was given a brief overview by Casey Hudson. He also believes that the blue, green, and red choices that exist as the ending of Mass Effect 3 now may have actually been conceptualized in this early mock-up storyboard ending that he made. And the reason he says that is because he actually used the exact same colors in his original mock-ups, but they weren't intended to actually translate to actual endings. They were just simply used to help the team differentiate from what ending they were working on or what ending was being shown. So blue was supposed to represent Paragon, red was supposed to represent Renegade, and then they chose green as more of the neutral alternative colors simply because they didn't have another color to go with that ending. But to reiterate, the blue, red, and green colors themselves were not actually supposed to be a part of the ending. The original storyboard went as follows. Shepard has been augmented and enhanced substantially with technology. More so than I would assume he was in Mass Effect 2, when he was resurrected, because he's actually able to plug himself manually into the Citadel. And he finds his mind transported to a virtual world, perhaps similar to the virtual environment that Legion subjects Shepard to in Mass Effect 2 as well. In this virtual environment, he meets with the Reaper Prime, or the god of all the other Reapers, well, at least the virtual conception or mind of the Reaper Prime, and he is told by this Reaper Prime that the Reaper's cycling process and means of extermination across the galaxy is not actually a sustainable process for the Reapers themselves, and that they would need to evolve or augment their plans for the better if they wanted to continue existing far into the future. Unfortunately, the Reaper's AI had limitations that made it impossible to do so. The Reaper Prime was ostracized and locked away in the Citadel by the Reaper's collective hive mind because it was proposing ideas that the Reapers change their ways and perhaps even alter their programming. Shepard, coming into contact with the Reaper Prime, had finally given it a chance to make its ideas that it had conceptualized a reality. In response to this, Shepard could say no, unplug himself from the virtual world, and destroy the entire Reaper mainframe that was being held within the Citadel. This would cause the entire structure to explode and would wipe out Earth in the process. It would put an end to the Reapers once and for all, but it would have also destroyed an entire planet. This would have been the Renegade option. Alternatively, Shepard could actually overtake the Reaper Prime's position and become the Reaper Prime himself, and then utilize this new form as a tool for good. This would be the Paragon option. And finally, there was a third option that had the Reaper Prime use some form of fancy space magic and combine the best parts of itself with the best parts of Shepard, and then it would dissipate the result of this combination throughout the galaxy. This would be similar to the synthesis ending in Mass Effect 3, as Shepard would likely be vaporized as his matter was mixed with the matter of the Reaper Prime. It would then be dissipated across the entire galaxy, and it would change everything and affect everyone, transforming them into synthesized organic hybrids. Now, it's interesting to ponder the implications that this information may have on our outlook of the ending. Would fans and players have preferred a Reaper-based entity as the final encounter on the Citadel, as opposed to the Catalyst being showcased as a child? I assume that the majority of the player base would say yes, that this already sounds like a better version. Seeing as this was never actually released to us, there's no way to know for sure how everyone would have reacted. An interesting note that I'd like to bring up, however, is that this version of the game's ending actually ties up a lot of loose ends regarding Reaper morality, programming, and thought processes that seemed a little bit disingenuous throughout the series that I actually discussed in my previous video. The Reaper's logic is somewhat flawed and contradictory throughout the Mass Effect trilogy, and I discussed a lot of that in my previous video on this channel. And I don't want to go into too much detail regarding all of that, but I've placed a link in the description in case any of you guys would like a chance to watch my previous video to get some more context on the deep dive I did relating to Reaper behaviors. In essence, though, the inclusion of a Reaper Prime discussing Reaper evolution, programming, AI, and thought processes really hits the nail on the head when it comes to Reaper issues that I discussed in my previous video. Alright, so lastly, I wanted to discuss the implications that this has for the indoctrination theory. As I'm sure many of you watching this video already know, I am an adamant critic of the indoctrination theory, and as of earlier this year, BioWare developers have already debunked and dismissed the theory by stating that it was not their intention for the ending of Mass Effect 3 to be perceived that way, and that they did not conceptualize the theory. However, I feel as though I'd be doing myself a disservice if I made this video and did not talk about the indoctrination theory. Seeing as negative reaction to the game's original ending is what helped propel the theory in the first place, I'd like to take a chance now to reiterate what I've said in the past and further show that this just puts another nail in a coffin for the indoctrination theory. The developers at BioWare did not create Mass Effect 3's ending with the indoctrination theory in mind, and I think the release of this information regarding an early storyboard mock-up showing an ending that is more similar to the ending that we actually got is just further proof of that. I've argued extensively against the indoctrination theory in the past, and I also covered the interview with Chris Hepler that took place earlier this year, during which he stated that the development team never intended the indoctrination theory to be the ending, and that it wasn't conceived by them. And now we have further substantial proof that the theory has been dismissed and was not intended by BioWare from this interview as well, right? This 30-minute interview talking about the ending of the Mass Effect 3 game and the implications that it had for the development team and the negative backlash and what they did to fix it and what they had originally conceptualized for the ending never included indoctrination theory. I think it's really important to note that even some of the developers that were interviewed in People Make Games video actually voiced a dislike for the theory. Mark Antoine Matten, who is currently a 3D animator with Ubisoft Montreal, was a former cinematic animator for BioWare at the time of Mass Effect 3, and he goes as far as to state that it's actually a horrible storytelling trope that makes no sense. So he really dislikes it. And he states that he understood why people were clinging to the theory, and he felt that it was more of a form of comfort for everybody because they had such a dissatisfaction with the actual ending that they got. And another developer, John Ebinger, who was a cinematic designer for BioWare at the time, had a few words in relation to the release of the Extended Cut DLC, stating that in relation to the release of the original ending and the backlash that came from it, that it boggled his mind that people could tell an artist or tell a creator that what they gave to them as an ending was not their ending, it was not right, and that they would have to go and make another ending to fix it. It seems as though, creative freedom or artistic freedom was a big part of what Ebinger was trying to get at. And when you're given something by an artist, be it in the form of a video game, a movie, a painting, or whatnot, that even if you disagree with it or dislike it, you do not demand that the artist changes it for you. Now, there was another developer that stated that he actually really liked the idea of the indoctrination theory, and that he wished that the actual ending was the indoctrination theory. But that doesn't negate the fact that it is not the ending. The very fact of him stating that he wished the ending was similar to the indoctrination theory or was the indoctrination theory should be enough to prove to us that all of the developers, whether they disliked or liked the theory, knew that it was not the actual ending. I know that there are a lot of people that like to say that they don't care what BioWare or its previous developers, or even its current developers, have to say about the true ending of the game or what is or isn't canon. But in all honesty, I think it's silly for some people to be outright ignoring the developers that actually got to work on the game, had real experiences with its development, and had first-hand knowledge on what was intended for the actual ending. Just because you dislike or disagree with what the developer had to say about their experiences and what their intentions were for the game doesn't mean that you can just ignore them and pretend that their intentions mean nothing. I don't care if you want to play the game and pretend that the theory is the true ending or the real ending to your Shepard's story. There's absolutely no harm in that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I truly think that people need to stop arguing for the validity of the theory and stop trying to explain to new players that it is a real ending or a canonical option. It was not created by BioWare, and it's not some secret canon ending. I think that everything that has been brought up in relation to this topic proves that unequivocally. If anything, though, this whole discussion has been a really good opportunity to at least recognize that there was a lot of fan disappointment and outrage relating to the ending of Mass Effect 3 when it initially was released that sparked the conception of the theory. The theory was conceived out of the dissatisfaction for the original ending. And I think that the video put together by People Make Games really helped to showcase that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really appreciate all the continued support I get from all of you. Please, I want to reiterate, go check out the video made by People Make Games. I've linked it in the description. It is fantastic, and it will obviously cover a lot more ground than I covered here in this quick video. You'll get a lot more context in relation to what I discussed. A lot of the points will be made quite a bit more clear if you go and watch that now that you've watched this. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you think the interview went well, if you think the developers had a lot of very interesting and creative takes that you hadn't heard before. And also let me know if it's changed your perspective on the ending of the game. You know, with the knowledge that there was a storyboard that was originally put forward for the ending of the game that involved a Reaper entity as opposed to the Star Child. You know, if you thought that that was a better idea than what we got, or if you thought that that was what ultimately led us to where we ended up with the actual ending, you know, all of that, feel free to put your thoughts down below. I love interacting with all of you guys in the comments, and I love reading all your comments. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you learned something new, and this will probably be one of the last videos on my channel for quite a while now. I'll post whenever I'm able to. Thanks guys, and have a good one.